feels like a festive thing to me, and the house looks happy, and it looks just so great up in the sky in the sun like that.
I see this house from my kitchen window, and I'm really going to miss it now that it's being moved down to the ocean front.
That's a great building.
My father would be laughing hysterically now if he could see this.
He's the one who brought it up
He
there,
moved
is that right?
it, yeah.
That's what I
Yeah,
heard, yeah.
41 years ago.
He bought it for $1. And then there was the cottage in which I think they kept boats right next to it. And while the movers were there, my father said, oh, well, while you're at it, take the little building too. It was a shell, basically. It hadn't been used in ages, and the town was poised to tear it down. And 40 years later, the whole situation is so changed that now they realize this is a historic building. It's a treasure.
If you were a novice, or if you were a modern-day boater, you'd look at Long Island and you'd think that any traffic, certainly for trade, would have gone through Long Island Sound. That wasn't really the case, because larger boats had a great deal of dangerous time getting to New York because there were a whole lot of rocks. So normally the shipping was on the South Shore, which meant that you constantly had trade from Europe. You had trade from even the southern colonies who would bring things up to New York. Coal barges, which would come from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, would be coming through. The trade was incredible. So this was the major highway.
My people go back to the early 1600s. And so naturally, if a boat came ashore, somebody had to take care of the people and to save them. All the people worked together, and it was a real tight community.
It was often the bell tolling of a church bell that let people know that there was a wreck. And people would go out, and they would go out with, hot beverages or cold beverages or whatever was necessary. And we have stories of people with baked goods and things of this nature. So you get this informal life-saving, if you will, just because you're neighbors. And then as time goes on, after the Civil War, you get it formally created.
Then they came along and the government took over the life-saving service and made the pay grade. And that's when my father, most of the men that was whalers would ended up being captains of the Coast Guard station.
The South Shore of Long Island was, of course, the primary site for shipwrecks with a lot of traffic. So the service placed 30 life-saving stations on the South Shore. Theoretically, halfway between two stations, there would be a beach patrol there. And also from the lookout tower, you could see halfway to the next station, so the whole coast was under surveillance and protected.
They were very interesting architecturally. You had one at Ditch Plain. You had one in Amagansett. You had one in Georgica. You had one in Wainscott. You had one back in Watermill. Then you just went, about 10, 12 miles apart from one another.
the 1902 Amagansett Life-Saving Station. It's really a very elegant building for such a utilitarian structure. It was designed by a life-saving service architect named George Tolman from Boston, who had designed summer cottages. This type of station is known as the Quanticothog Station because the first of this design was built at Quanticothog, Rhode Island.
I'd say from the time I was 5 years old, I used to always go over to the Coast Guard station. And while I was up there, most young of them guys would let me look through the spyglasses or one of these sailing ships.
You might have sent the kids down to play with the guys at the life-saving station who notoriously showed kids how things were done and let them sit in the boat. That building in itself was like a big pot-bellied stove, a country store. It was a place to exchange ideas and fraternize.
And then, of course, if anything happened, like somebody on a ship was sick, they would put up the international code flags and they'd go out in the surf boat and pick up whoever was sick on the boat.
Who knew when you could have a wind on a summer day that would, drive a boat aground? This whole sense of community and protection and pride and knowledge of the sea is just exactly what you'd expect along a shoreline.
So this is the boat room. This is the business part of the station where they stored the surf boats and the life-saving equipment. It's divided into 3 bays. Ideally, the life-saving station, who had kept a watch during the day or beach patrol at night, would discover a ship in distress and perform the rescue. The first option was to use a surf boat. Where we're standing right now was a 28-foot surf boat on a carriage, and its door was here, double doors. So this lifeboat could be taken out this doorway. And in the center bay, there was another 28-foot surf boat with its double doors over here. And there was a ramp to take it down to the sand. And if a notice came in of a shipwreck, they would usually take the surf boat down there first, but often it was too rough, or if the boat started to break up, making it dangerous to launch. In which case, they would come back to the station to get the breeches buoy cart. And here's the Jones cart. The breeches buoy apparatus was on this cart. So we would take this down to the beach. There's the gun and the line. And the breeches buoy, they would fire a projectile from a cannon. Fire! The idea was for the projectile to get tangled up in the rigging. Then someone on the boat would climb up the mast, fasten the line there. Then they would put the breeches buoy, which was more or less a life-saving ring with pants tied in it, on a little car that would run back and forth on the big hawser. This is a photograph of a shipwreck in Wainscott in the 1890s. The ship's name is the El Miranda, but it does show the use of the breeches buoy. You can see the line coming out here to the mast, the foremast of the ship. It's tied up at the yard arm here. And someone is riding in the breeches buoy to shore. And there was one shipwreck was actually in East Hampton at Main Beach, which was written up in the newspaper, where they told of the people coming back in the breeches buoy, dipping into the surf right at the very end and getting caught in the waves. And then they took these guys who got all wet and cold, put them in the car, took them to the Maidstone Inn for some food and hot drink. This is the mess room of the station, where the crew had their meals and could relax during the day. This is the barracks room for the crew, the surfmen. 5 surfmen lived here. They had cots arranged along the perimeter. This is the stairway up to the lookout tower, where the crew of the life-saving station would maintain a watch.
It was a bad night. I remember that night. Foggy, awful foggy. I was out on the trove.
It was in 1942 on June 12th that Nazi U-boat ran aground on the sandbar east of Atlantic Avenue Beach.
George John Dash had been a German soldier, and he and these guys had landed in Amagansett.
The idea was a small group of saboteurs were going to go and blow up power stations.
4 saboteurs landed from each submarine. They were well equipped with high explosives.
The U-boat really goes aground.
They raft in from the submarine, and the submarine's out sort of off the shore.
Young Mr. Cullum is on his walk. He comes upon this guy. He only really sees one of them at first. The saboteur is really dumb. I mean, he says he's out fishing, and then he makes a comment about the wrong kind of fish. I mean, he's talking to a kid whose family grew up here. They were fishermen. And then he threatens the kid and then offers him money to keep him quiet.
And the Coast Guard guy backs off, goes to the house, says, something's wrong. They might be Germans.
They bury their material. They walk off to the train station. Cullum has notified his superior, who's notified New York. New York notifies Washington.
And Dash, he was repatriated to Germany, and I think he lived kind of miserably because the Germans did not think highly of him.
Right off in the ocean shore is where the 4 Nazi saboteurs came ashore in their raft, landed on the beach. So this is the spot where their buried cache of explosives, clothing, and other items was found. The site is right here where we are now. It's right next to the life-saving station. John Cullum did not have very far to go.
The modern story of the Amagansett Life-Saving is probably as convoluted as, other parts of its history. The building was decommissioned, sitting on federal property, and luckily for us, one of our summer colonists loved the building.
My father came to Amagansett in the early 50s, when there were a lot of other people in New York coming out there who were writers or artists or business people. In 1966, the building in Amagansett hadn't been used for a while, and the town didn't want to keep it. And so it was selling a bunch of these buildings off. And our father heard that it was for sale for $1.
My memory comes in on me basically being hired by my father to get the house ready to move.
And so he bought 3 acres on Bluff Road.
The house was moved from this location near the beach up the road to the property on Bluff Road, and I was 6 years old, and I was on my father's shoulders watching this huge house go by.
There's a little piece of lore. The guy taking footage puts his Volkswagen in front of the house.
But they made it look like the Volkswagen was pulling the house. What pulled the house up the hill was this really massive, truck.
And I think it was done in a day. And it moved up Atlantic Avenue to Bluff Road.
Slowly up the hill, slow turns.
A general contractor was in charge of preparing the site, making a foundation and clearing the land.
And by the evening, it was settled up the hill on the foundation that had been prepared.
You could see the ocean even from our room on the second floor. As I go through each room, memories of conversations that took place in the room I'm in come back. So your bed is here. Right up. My bed is here. I can hear people's voices. I can, in my mind's eye, see people, see their gestures.
Parties and events and conversations, my father at the head of the table, bantering. In this room, this is what we always called the big room. And it's where the boats were kept when the house was down on the beach.
He had this magnificent ballroom for giving dinner parties.
Sometimes people would just drop by.
Artists and intellectuals. And there were debates about politics or history. I mean, there were certain sort of eccentric people in my father's circle for whom he seemed to have unlimited tolerance and affection somehow.
There was Dwight MacDonald, who wrote about film, politics. There was Tino Nivola, who was an extremely charming Sardinian sculptor who lived nearby. He liked Saul Steinberg very much. He would come often for dinner. And Harold Rosenberg, he was an art critic. Our father was extremely unusual, I would say.
He had a fairly large study off his master bedroom, which was really just a writing room.
As a writer, he had two main areas of interest. One was Russian history, and the other was early Christianity, anti-Semitism. His most successful book was The Death of Jesus.
Willem de Kooning, who was a Dutch painter, lived about 3 or 4 miles away. He, our father thought, was one of the very few people who had bought his book. But he would bicycle over here and discuss the book with our father, and our father used to say, he represented 100% of my readership as regarded that book.
There was a whole animal theme, always.
I kept bees. I had about 5 or 6 hives.
My father bought a goat, who was at the time a kid goat, and then became, by the following summer, a full-grown, enormous white male goat. My father had a real special relationship with that goat.
I think he enjoyed sort of the notion of having this grand old house. If you suggested that he might have thought of himself as a 19th century gentleman and kind of landowner, maybe he did. It was a great house.
Just do me a favor, back off over there until we get all these poles. Thank you.
Deborah and David and I discussed what to do. I know Deborah and I thought it would be good to give the building back to the town, and David agreed as well.
When the house was moved down the road back to its original site, instead of a truck, they mounted a generator onto the side of the house.
They didn't have this kind of sophisticated thing, hydraulics.
It's obviously electric motors that have moved the whole thing.
And the generator was basically controlled by remote control. So he really, really looked like a big kid.
Driving this gigantic house.
like a toy car.
Monumental and regal, sort of stately rather.
Exactly. It's a handsome building, a very handsome building. So we hope it will live a long, long time.
That's right.
Partly it feels sad, a little bit of grief. The sadness about losing my father and giving the house away. But I think really overall, it just feels like this was the right and the best possible decision. And I really hope they're going to take good care of it.
Now comes the more pressing work, which is restoring the building. The idea is to restore it to what it was when it was a life-saving station or a Coast Guard station. We thought it was important to keep it as a local and national sort of landmark, and that people would love to be able to come and see it.
Poppy actually originally wanted to keep it down there where it was and just live in it down there by the beach. So really, it's sort of doing what he wanted anyway. Putting it back in its spot.
This is a really important building. This building and the Montauk Point Lighthouse are the two in the town of East Hampton that really recall the era when goods and transportation for people was in ships along the shore.
What a great place to learn about these people that helped rescue people. It is one of the most beautiful. It's one of the most telling. I think one of the great problems with history for years and years was that it always seemed to be about the great people. It's not a new idea to examine everyday lives. It was a place to exchange ideas, and it was a community building in many ways. And it was, everyone was involved with it. That's pretty amazing. There aren't many of those around.
Spirals, shifting sands beneath our feet. Ocean tides, they come and go. Memories that linger, stories that shape our lives. Ships of past, returning home. Lost and song now my own. I hear your voice through the winds of time. Day turns to night, night turns to day. Spiraling, spiraling home. Here we are, a new beginning in the